Everybody, welcome back. Real quick video tonight. I was talking about this kind of concept a little bit earlier today while we were evaluating some tools, and I thought it's a good time to make a video about this because I realized I hadn't in the past, and it's a good topic. But I didn't put a whole lot of effort into the slideshow, so no pretty colors. We're just going to bang through this real quick. I wanted to talk a little bit about threat intel feeds and the importance of both the feed itself, but also diversifying those feeds when you're starting to evaluate tools and you're alerting and you're basically your ability to detect on on your network, right? So, what is a threat intel feed? Threat intelligence feeds are data streams that you can subscribe to that provide actionable threat data, right? And threat intel feeds specifically generally include IOC information, so file hashes, URLs, things like that. So while threat intelligence as a whole or threat feeds can include basic information about APTs, the idea behind a threat intel feed specifically is that you have a stream of data to your tooling that keeps it up to date with whatever more recent attacker based data exists, right? A good example is if we know that there's an APT out there that's using, I don't know, Mimikatz or something. And then all of a sudden they change the file so it has a different file hash that they're using in the attachments that they're sending out, or they're using some new script with a different file hash. Once that's discovered and recognized by the community or whoever's doing the research to find this stuff, depending on the feed you're getting it from, they can share that in their threat feed. And if you're subscribed to that, and if you have it running into your SIM or into your firewall or into your EDR or wherever you're subscribing to these feeds, that data now becomes a part of your detection capability, right? So if you're going into your SIM and you see, hey, this new file hash is here, and boom, all of a sudden it pops up on your network, you get alerted because it's now a known bad guy thing, right? Similarly, if you're seeing bad URLs and you're using a DNS filter or your firewall, the threat feed can populate that on your firewall and block those URLs or in your DNS filtering tool, whatever you're subscribing to or whatever methodologies you're using. Now, one of the things that we have to kind of make sure of when we start diving into layering tools is the idea of threat intelligence diversity. And where this comes into play is you want to make sure that the tooling you're using is also using diverse threat intelligence, because if you only subscribe to one feed on everything you're doing, you're really limiting your capability for detection down to whatever that threat intel feed has available. Um, we use layers in security because we know that no individual tool or process is perfect. And we use layers and different detection capabilities to kind of cover that, right? We might use an EDR because we want to look at host based stuff, but we know not everything is host based. And we know EDRs won't catch anything. So we'll also look at firewall traffic, right? We know that firewall traffic isn't perfect. So we might also look at just, data flow or something and see something leaving the network, egressing the network. And we kind of track those kinds of things. We look at DNS because DNS is helpful, but it's not perfect. So we layer in all these different functions so we have the ability to see attackers in different places on the network and in different ways. Um, but if the definitions or the threat intel data that all of these tools are using is contingent on being from one provider, and that provider doesn't know something going on in the world, and none of the providers are perfect, then you limit your ability to detect across all of your tools. So ultimately, you want to have a variety of threat intel feeds so your tools have the most data available to them. And it's important to understand that diversity when you're starting to look into layering tools to close up gaps, right? The While it's helpful to have another detection method using an EDR or some type of audit against like PowerShell scripting or those types of things, looking at different kinds of logs, that's all very useful. You also want to have information on attackers from different sources so you get the maximum amount of coverage. What you wouldn't want to do is say you're using a DNS filter tool already, something like DNS filter or Umbrella or any of the tools that are out there, right? Um, and then you decide that you want to start using content filtering on your firewall also. If the DNS tool and the content filtering tool are using the exact same threat data, you're not really getting anything better other than maybe on the firewall devices that don't have the DNS agent installed, if it's agent based, now can get filtered. So you get some benefit, but you don't get all the benefit. You get more benefit if you added another threat feed that has unique data or a unique research team or perspective on threats to feed that data so you get more coverage and blocking, if that kind of makes sense. Right. So we look at this little diagram, if we had three different tools and three different feeds, Tool number one here is getting two feeds of information. Tool number two is getting two. Tool number three is getting two. But if we got rid of F1 and F3, it's just one feed across all three tools. Not as good. You want to kind of maximize some of this stuff, right? Like more feeds often is better if you can keep up with the tuning and things like that, and they're quality feeds. All right. When you're starting to look at threat feeds, we can do a whole nother video on like threat feed selection. This one is really meant to talk about the diversity aspect of it, but understand there are both free open source feeds and there are paid feeds that you can subscribe to. The free open source ones, cheap. They're free, right? That's good. They're readily available. They're community driven. They are generally of quality. I'm not going to say free open source feeds are bad. They're not. There's really good ones out there. There's also paid ones. The paid ones tend to be better curated in my experience. They might have better, stronger detections written if it's also providing detection capability or YARA rules or things like that. They have the funding to develop that kind of stuff. So maybe if you're paying for it, that's some of the curation you're paying for, or the, I don't know, just higher fidelity alerting, I'll say. They're often also aggregating open sources as well. So you can kind of figure out, are they actually developing all their own intelligence, or are they just taking other people's open source intelligence, cleaning it up a bit and reselling it as a more polished product? But there's also ones that are more industry specialized. So if you're looking for, OT specific data, there's probably a provider out there for OT specific stuff, or healthcare, or maybe industry and vertical specific intelligence. So you can kind of look at both. Definitely don't shy away from open source. It's good, it works, but you have to understand that paid versions tend to come with premium content at times. So do the cost analysis, figure out if it's worthwhile to pay for it, or if you're going to spend more, if you're not paying for stuff, if you're spending more in labor to keep up with tuning and things like that, and dealing with the open free versions of the threat feeds and your tools. All right. That's kind of it. Quick video tonight. Have a great night, everybody. And yeah, have a great weekend.